Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a massive stack of source material introductions, notes, and the short fiction of one of the great architects of the modern scientific imagination.
We are. And we're going to try and chart the truly colossal landscape of ideas he built.
And this isn't just, a survey of his stories. It's really a deep dive into the origin of some profound foresight.
It's an essential collection, I think, for any learner. Because what you get is a really forensic look at the creative blueprint of a mind that, it shaped our technological destiny. We're looking at how environment, pure chance encounters, and these really critical early influences all sort of coalesced.
To create this author who could just tackle the biggest themes you can think of.
Absolutely. First contact, human survival against, impossible cosmic odds, and all the ethical dilemmas that come with mastering technology.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission today is to distill those foundational influences that really forged this imagination.
Right.
And then we'll explore three core thematic areas that are woven all through his stories. So first, where does that cosmic curiosity really come from?
The genesis of it all.
Yeah, exactly. Second, the staggering scale and, I guess, the sense of destiny that's inherent in his first contact scenarios. And finally, the psychological limits. Human resilience when you're faced with a technological crisis.
And what's so fascinating in these sources is that the author, he wasn't just a dreamer, not at all. He was a serious technical predictor.
I mean, this is the person who detailed the concept of geostationary communications satellites.
In 1945, a concept that went from, pure speculation to being fundamental infrastructure in our own lifetimes.
What really gets me is the almost prophetic quality of some of the images that inspired him in the first place.
Oh, you mean the magazine cover?
Yes, the sources mention the November 1928 issue of Amazing Stories. It was one of the very first pulp magazines he ever laid eyes on.
And you have to look at that cover art by Frank Baum.
It's incredible.
Paul, the artist, he drew Jupiter on that cover. But it wasn't just, a fuzzy gas ball.
No.
He depicted it with this astonishing detail. Turbulent cloud formations, massive cyclonic patterns, and these really enigmatic white structures.
Like huge Earth-sized amoebae just floating in the atmosphere. It's bizarre.
And the truly staggering realization, which the sources really highlight, is that Paul drew those specific complex details with such stunning accuracy.
That they weren't confirmed until the Voyager missions.
50 years later, a full 50 years. It just shows the power of imaginative synthesis, doesn't it?
It really does.
This early exposure to science fiction gave him this unique ability to visualize futures, sometimes decades before the technology or the science could catch up.
So we're exploring the mind that could conceptualize the impossible and then,
through sheer technical rigor, make it seem utterly plausible.
Okay, let's begin where that imagination really started. The genesis of grand ideas.
His creative roots.
The sources detail how environment and really just absolute chance played these decisive roles in shaping his entire outlook. And it starts, fittingly, right at the edge of the sea.
He was born in Minehead, Somerset, barely half a mile from the Bristol Channel.
And the source notes that, to a child, that channel must have felt oceanic, just immense.
He spent his youth in constant contact with the water, right? Exploring rock pools, building these complex, wave-defying battlements out of sand on the beach.
And that coastal environment, it wasn't just a backdrop for his childhood. It defined his comfort zone for his entire life.
He said it explicitly, that even as an adult, he only felt completely relaxed by the edge of the sea.
Or even better, hovering weightless beneath it over a reef, which is a passion that later led him to move to Sri Lanka and become an avid diver.
So he actually recognized that this geographical fate, it almost determined his career path. He writes that if he'd been born at an earlier age,
He would have been a maritime writer.
Exactly. Focus on the deep ocean. But he was born at this precise moment when the idea of escaping the planet was moving from lunacy to theoretical possibility.
And his fascination was, as he put it, decisively deflected into space.
A great phrase.
But before that definitive turn towards the stars, there was what he called a curious detour, a pivotal, very singular memory that involved his father.
First Lieutenant Charles Wright Clarke.
That's him. And this is just a wonderful little anecdote that connects the past, the future, and even a little bit of unexpected cultural commentary.
The memory is from around 1925. He's a little boy riding in a pony cart, and his father opens a pack of cigarettes.
And hands him the little promotional card from inside.
And it had a picture of prehistoric animals on it. Dinosaurs.
And that one, seemingly random, mass-produced little item, a cigarette card, it triggers this lifelong, profound fascination with dinosaurs and the deep geological past.
He started collecting them, used them to illustrate little adventure stories for the other kids in his village school. It was his first real venture into narrative fiction.
And this is where the irony, which he clearly appreciated, really lands.
He often joked that the tobacco trade deserved the mandatory death penalty.
And yet, that very trade provided the decisive beneficial catalyst for his entire career. It's perfect.
And that fascination just moved so abruptly, from collecting fossils and relics of the distant past to charting this unimaginable interstellar future. It's the ultimate shift in temporal focus.
And we can actually pin down the exact moment that future-facing outlook really solidified. He identifies 3 separate crucial incidents.
And they all happened in this very narrow window, between 1929 and 1930.
The first one, when he was about 12, was that moment we mentioned earlier, seeing his first science fiction magazine.
The November 1928 issue of Amazing Stories. He described hunting through the local Woolworths for his fix.
And he was very clear that the literary standards of those, quote, garish pulps were often abysmal.
But they were, as he said, brimmed with ideas. And crucially, they evoked that indispensable sense of wonder.
He even called science fiction the only genuine consciousness-expanding drug.
Think about that claim, that this specific type of writing could literally break down your conceptual barriers, change your worldview, and make you realize the universe was infinitely larger and stranger than you ever thought.
It's the sheer force of pure concept.
And the second incident, which gave him the philosophical framework for all those concepts, arrived in 1930.
This was a much more literate, more rigorous influence.
It was. W. Olaf Stapledon's novel Last and First Men. He found it in the Minehead Public Library.
This is really the source of what people call the Stapledonian scope that defines his best work, isn't it?
Absolutely. The novel doesn't deal in decades, but in these vast vistas of millions, even hundreds of millions of years. It details the rise, the transformation, and the fall of entire races and civilizations.
He notes that Stapledon's book changed his whole outlook on the universe almost overnight. It gave him the intellectual capacity to operate on that geological, cosmic timescale.
You just can't read his later work, especially something like The Sentinel, without seeing the profound shadow of Stapledon's conceptual bravery.
And the third critical incident, this one really reveals the cultural context he was fighting against, the deep skepticism of his era.
Right. He encountered David Lasser's book, The Conquest of Space.
And Lasser was the editor of a group of Gernsback magazines, so he was deeply rooted in that early scientific community.
Lasser later became a prominent labor organizer, which certainly made him a few enemies. But the sources highlight that Lasser was publicly denounced in Congress.
Not just as a political radical.
No, specifically as a madman. And why? Simply because he believed that humanity would one day fly to the moon.
That's a stunning realization, right? In the span of just a few years, space travel went from an idea that could get you denounced on the floor of Congress to a technical reality.
It perfectly illustrates the intellectual environment of the time. Space travel was seen as total lunacy, a fiction, not a legitimate engineering aspiration.
And that environment clearly fueled his drive. But despite these 3 critical influences, writing was still just a hobby for him until 1950.
He had to subsidize his work. He held very straight jobs in the civil service, the RAF, editing a scientific abstracting journal.
He wrote countless articles in this slim, very technical book called Interplanetary Flight.
And that book's modest success was just enough to convince him to write The Exploration of Space, which found a much, much wider audience.
It was a dual selection of the Book of the Month Club in 1952.
Which led to one of the greatest pieces of unintentional comedy in publishing history.
Oh, this is fantastic.
To reassure the often anxious Book of the Month Club readership that this wasn't some wild-eyed speculation.
The prominent critic, Clifton Fadiman, he wrote in the club's newsletter that The Exploration of Space was a serious, level-headed work.
Because, and I quote, Mr. Clarke does not appear to be a very imaginative man.
The irony is just sublime. This is the man who would co-create the monoliths and the Star Child, and he's being called unimaginative.
But the success was real, and it encouraged him to finally quit his editorial job and become a full-time writer.
And his advice for aspiring authors based on this transition, it's often overlooked, I think. He didn't stress structured courses or anything.
No, he stressed living. His famous maxim was, read at least 1 book a day and write as much as you can.
There is no substitute for living. As Hemingway wisely remarked, writing is not a full-time occupation.
Writing comes from experience, not from just reading other writers.
He closes his introduction with this really melancholy note, though. It reflects the explosion of the very field he helped pioneer.
He estimates that almost as much science fiction is printed today in a single month as appeared every year when he was a boy.
He belonged to the last generation, ours, he called it, that was able to read literally everything published in the burgeoning science fiction field.
Today, that's just mathematically impossible. It really underscores just how profoundly the ideas he championed transformed from a niche hobby into a dominant cultural force.
Okay, so now we shift from the man to the cosmic architect.
I like that.
We're jumping into the great thematic areas inspired by his unique foundational experiences. Our first theme, scale and destiny.
And this means stories that deal with first contact and that deep geological time perspective.
So let's start with the seed of his most famous work, the short story, The Sentinel.
A story written way back in 1948. It was the core idea that later bloomed into 2001, A Space Odyssey.
And it immediately establishes that immense Stapledonian scale we were just talking about. It places human civilization within this much larger, almost chillingly impersonal cosmic timeline.
So the narrative is set on the moon's Mare Crisium. It was moved to the crater Tycho for the film, for dramatic effect.
And the expedition there finds this impossible artifact. It's described with such precision.
A glittering, roughly pyramidal structure set in the rock like a gigantic, many-faceted jewel.
But the initial puzzle wasn't the artifact itself, was it? It was the ground around it.
Exactly. The lunar plateau was covered inches deep with cosmic dust and meteor scratches. The result of what? Hundreds of millions of years of ceaseless bombardment from space?
And yet, there was this wide, perfect circle enclosing the pyramid that was absolutely pristine, untouched.
The critical realization. There had to be an invisible force field, a protective wall, shielding it from millennia of wear and tear.
And that field, that's the key to everything.
It is, because it allowed the geologists to measure its age. They dated the thickness of the dust layer outside the circle.
And the conclusion is just stunning. The machine was set there by this highly ancient race that swept through the solar system.
Before life had even emerged from the seas of Earth.
It was placed in the deep past, anticipating a distant future that we have only just now attained.
It just makes us, all of humanity, feel like an afterthought, doesn't it? Or maybe just a potential candidate.
Well, the challenge of the story is explicit. Why put it on the moon? Why not on Earth, where life was going to originate?
Because the builders, in their wisdom, were only interested if a civilization proved its fitness to survive.
And there were two criteria.
Two criteria. One, conquering atomic energy, and two, conquering space. The moon was the ultimate test.
So, by reaching the moon, finding the pyramid, and then forcing it open, which they did, using atomic power to split the rock around it, humanity signals its arrival.
We signal our maturity.
We didn't exactly pass the test gently, did we? We kind of forced the door open with a massive amount of energy.
And the final terrifying implication is that we have triggered something that we cannot untrigger.
It's just a fire alarm.
Exactly. The source notes the Sentinel was merely a fire alarm. Its signals have stopped. Its job is done. And now those whose duty it is, the emissaries from the Milky Way, the builders, will turn their minds upon Earth.
The story ends with that chilling summary. We have set off the fire alarm and have nothing to do but to wait.
It completely shifts human destiny. From self-determination to being subject to this external ancient observer, it's the ultimate long-term perspective.
Let's contrast that with Rescue Party, written even earlier, in 1945. Here the challenge isn't deep time, it's rapid disaster.
Right. A group of advanced aliens, Alvaron's race, arrive in their ship, the S-9000, and they're attempting to rescue a doomed race on a planet,
Earth,
which is about to go nova in 7 hours.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking.
The stakes just could not be higher. The alien ship is running its generators at ultimate overload just to get here in time. They're risking their own destruction.
And the doom would follow any escapees, even to the outer planets. They are fighting physics and an incredibly tight clock.
So they arrive at a major Earth city, and they're expecting to find the population in a total panic or preparing for immediate flight.
And instead, it's deserted.
Utterly empty, and it takes the aliens time to realize that the culture of cities had died out over a century before.
All thanks to universal personal transportation. Mankind had scattered into this decentralized, rural civilization.
And this cultural shift just completely baffles the Paladorian explorers. Their own history is all urban-centric.
They do. And then they start finding these strange clues, suggestions of a highly advanced civilization that just vanished without a trace,
They find an abandoned radio station on a decapitated mountain.
broadcasting simultaneously on many bands, pointed blindly into space.
And not toward the other planets in the system.
No, pointed out.
They also discover a great library, millions of books, all preserved, but one entire rack is suspiciously half empty.
Suggesting someone had rescued valuable books, not as some systematic project, but as an afterthought during a chaotic evacuation.
And then, during their underground exploration, they get trapped.
Right. They find this massive subway system, a passage designed for multi-legged creatures' comfort, which is a great detail. And they get stuck in a train that's set to human psychology.
It's designed to prioritize safety and delay at critical moments.
So they're hurtling underground, running out of time, and the only way they are saved is by the intervention of the Paladorian group mind.
Okay, we need to take a moment to explain this. What exactly is this consciousness?
The sources introduce the Paladorian group mind as an emergent consciousness. It's not a single individual.
It's the sum of its parts.
It's the linked totality of all the individual Paladorian units aboard the S9000, connecting their intellects into an entity more powerful than any single consciousness in the known universe.
And this collective mind provides the intuitive jump they need to survive.
And eventually, to rescue the stranded explorers. But the final revelation is just utterly stunning. The ultimate escape wasn't through the aliens at all.
No, it was a testament to human potential, fueled by sheer desperation.
The Paladorians are just astounded when they finally figure out what happened. Those blind radio beams were aimed far outside the plane of the solar system.
The human race, the youngest civilization in the universe, having only known radio for 2 centuries.
Suddenly built the greatest fleet of which there has ever been a record, using primitive rockets for interstellar flight.
They knew the journey would take centuries for their descendants to complete. They didn't just flee the solar system.
They left it, demonstrating this immense, sudden, almost suicidal will to survive that just dwarfed the Paladorians' own 6,000 years of slower, safer progress.
That contrasts humanity achieving this feat of interstellar colonization in 2 centuries, driven by the absolute necessity of extinction that took the more advanced race millennia to do. That's what makes the story so powerful.
It is. It's a testament to the power of crisis to unlock radical potential.
It speaks to a focused, collective, and immediate will to survive.
Even if it meant sacrificing the generation that built the fleet for the sake of the distant descendants who would arrive at the destination, it's an act of profound selflessness and faith in a future they would never, ever see.
Okay, our third case study in scale is Jupiter V from 1951, and this one focuses on Jupiter's tiny 5th moon, Amalthea.
Barely 30 kilometers in diameter.
And the character, Professor Forster, a determined archaeologist, he believes he's searching for traces of Culture X.
This highly advanced reptilian-like race that colonized Mercury and was thought to have died out on Mars 5 million years ago.
They avoided Earth and Venus, apparently, because of the excessive gravity. They found it crushing.
And Forster was convinced they weren't just solar system inhabitants. He believed they were interstellar visitors.
And the key visual clue that changed everything came from the moon itself. Jupiter V had this unusual albedo.
Its reflecting power.
Right. It suggested the surface wasn't rock, but polished metal.
And from space, the surface was covered with these geometrically precise lines like latitude and longitude, visible even through high-powered teleperiscopes.
The critical realization hits them.
This moon is not a moon at all. It is an interstellar ship, 30 kilometers across, constructed as a mobile planetoid to support its inhabitants for generations.
And the Jovians, the name given to Culture X, they were immense, about 4 times as tall as men.
So this is archaeology on an unimaginable scale, preserved perfectly in the vacuum of space.
The exploration team enters and they find the Temple of Art where they discover a statue, the Ambassador.
Let's focus on the detail here because it's clearly designed to bridge cultural barriers.
It's smaller than life size, which suggests maybe it was meant to be carried. It's slender, with a reptilian head, gill-like neck openings.
And it holds an unknown instrument. It's carved with superb skill. The figure doesn't just look intelligent. It exudes this wisdom and a profound reflective sadness.
It's designed specifically to bridge the barriers of time and culture. Its whole purpose was to greet whatever beings might one day find the place.
But then, when the team tries to take this priceless statue back with them, They run headfirst into a profound physics problem.
The inertia problem.
This is such a great teaching moment for basic physics. In the low gravity of this small moon, the statue's weight is next to nothing. You could lift it easily.
But the statue's mass, the amount of matter it contains, that's unchanged.
And mass determines inertia. The resistance of an object changes in its state of motion.
So to get the statue moving, to accelerate it, it requires the same colossal amount of energy and fuel as if they were moving it on Earth. The low gravity doesn't help them at all.
Exactly. The statue has the inertia of a massive object, and accelerating that huge mass to escape velocity requires enormous amounts of fuel.
Fuel they just don't have. So they're forced to leave this profound, welcoming artifact behind. It's a technical frustration that only a physics-minded writer could dream up.
Until, that is, they manage to get the necessary fuel through a highly ingenious and technically legal act of piracy.
They use a colossal bluff involving Jupiter's gravity well and a simulated threat of plunging a rival photography team into the gas giant,
Forcing the rivals to hand over their fuel supply.
It's a perfect encapsulation of the human element, isn't it? The greatest cosmic discoveries might reveal the profound wisdom of ancient races.
But securing the prize often relies on modern human ingenuity, high-stakes trickery, and just a little bit of daring.
Okay, let's move to our final and maybe most psychologically revealing thematic area, technology, crisis, and the human limit.
These are the stories that focus less on those epic external scales and more on the internal psychological pressures of survival and the ethical dilemmas of technology.
Let's start with one of the most stressful scenarios imaginable, breaking strain.
A 1948 story. It puts two crewmen, Grant and McNeil, in an immediate mortal bind.
They're stranded after a meteor strikes their freighter, the Star Queen, and the meteor was terrifyingly small.
Just a centimeter across, weighing 10 grams. But it had the absolute worst possible luck, rupturing their vital oxygen stores.
And the sheer improbability of the collision just adds to the tension. The odds of it happening were estimated at once every 3 million years.
They had the statistical misfortune of the entire human race.
Their temporal predicament is just agonizing. The ship is 115 days out, with 30 days left on its predetermined long tangential ellipse.
Like a streetcar, he calls it.
To Venus. They're only 30 seconds away from safety and radio time lag, but the physical journey will take a month.
And then they do the math. They calculate the remaining air supply, and the terrible realization surfaces.
The air supply dictates that only one of them can survive the 23-day wait for the slow, expensive rescue that Venus is organizing.
This sets up the brutal moral equation. Grant, who operates under very few illusions about human nature, starts planning to poison McNeil.
Grant believes this is the only logical, if, repugnant path to ensure that at least one of them and the valuable cargo survives.
The shocking revelation, though, is that McNeil anticipated the attempt. He realized what Grant was planning, because he, too, never had many illusions about human nature, especially in a crisis.
And he'd already checked the poison bottle that Grant intended to use.
He describes the bottle in this chilling detail. A white label with a skull and crossbones and the words, "Approx. 1/2 gram will cause painless and almost instantaneous death."
McNeil knows, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that his crewmate intended to murder him for air.
The psychological depth here is just immense. McNeil's self-control in this moment is the true heroic act.
We learn that he'd been secretly smoking 4 cigarettes a day, not out of addiction.
No, because he calculated that precise amount wouldn't really affect the oxygen supply, but was necessary to maintain his nerves. He was preparing for this ultimate confrontation.
So he confronts Grant, reveals his knowledge of the planned poisoning, and then, in this act of profound, cold logic, insists they still follow the pre-agreed procedure.
Picking a card to determine who goes, McNeil says, "I can see that you still don't believe me. I'd hoped better of you, Grant."
And McNeil sacrifices himself. He walks calmly out of the airlock, fulfilling the necessary sacrifice, while simultaneously forcing Grant to confront the ethical failure of his own character.
McNeil's self-control, born of cold logic and a deep, perhaps cynical understanding of human nature. That is the truly heroic element here. It's not about technology.
It's an examination of the physical limits of the ship versus the psychological limits of the crew.
And McNeil sacrifices his life to save the mission, but he saves something more important. He preserves the ideal of human conduct in the face of inevitable death forcing the man who remained behind to live with that moral superiority for the rest of his life.
Wow. Okay, let's pivot from that to Guardian Angel, written in 1946. This deals with technological control and the irony of human mythology.
Earth is governed by the mysterious overlords, led by Supervisor Corellin, who maintains this incredible level of concealment.
He only communicates through a darkened screen.
And Corellin's control is absolute, but his methodology is gentle, which frustrates Stormgren, the Secretary General of the UN.
Corellin sees himself simply as a civil servant trying to administer a somewhat idealistic colonial policy.
And he dismisses all the wild human rumors that the overlords are robots or centipedes or amorphous blobs.
Corellin insists that concealment is necessary because the world is still riddled with prejudices and superstitions. He implies their appearance is just too shocking for the world to handle without collapsing into mass chaos.
And he admits this policy of benevolent concealment was applied on other worlds as well. This suggests it's their standard operating procedure for guiding younger races.
So Stormgren eventually collaborates with Duval, a physicist, to break this great concealment.
And Duval deduces that the advanced vision screen is actually nothing more complicated than a sheet of one-way glass.
A psychological trick.
It's a psychological trick used to maintain mystery and undisputed authority. The genius of the overlords is that the tech is ridiculously low-tech, but the manipulation is profound.
They're using humanity's own self-inflicted mystery against them.
Precisely. So Stormgren devises a plot. He'll use a high-frequency light gun to flash the screen at the exact moment Corellin opens the exit door, hoping to capture an image.
He succeeds. He catches a glimpse just as the door is closing. He sees the enormous chair is empty, but he catches sight of a horrifying and, well, beautiful detail.
Corellin has a very famous and unexpectedly beautiful tail, a barbed tail.
The implication is immediate and shocking for Stormgren and eventually for all of humanity.
The overlords are the very source of the devil, the Satan archetypes that haunts human mythology. They are quite literally demons.
And Corellin had trusted Stormgren just enough to allow him this glimpse, to solve the mystery for him personally, but not enough to undermine the authority of his superiors, who he just calls them.
It speaks volumes about the level of manipulation. The ultimate benevolent governor relies on humanity's deepest-seated fears and superstitions archetypes, spanning millennia, to maintain order and guide us.
The devil, it turns out, is the greatest colonial administrator in the galaxy.
And Stormgren realizes the supreme irony. He was fighting the secrecy to restore the sovereign state, only to realize the sovereign state itself was already dying before the overlords ever arrived.
Corellin's rule was just the final, necessary step in political evolution, the end of nationalism, driven by a figure that taps into our most primitive fears.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about a totally different kind of control and environment in A Meeting with Medusa from 1971. This is set on Jupiter.
And the protagonist is Howard Falcon, a man who survived a catastrophe but was utterly transformed by technology.
He survived the crash of the giant airship Queen Elizabeth only because of a half-second control time lag that caused the whole disaster.
He was literally put together again by surgeons who made critical improvements that gave him lightning-fast reaction times,
demonstrated by his ability to catch a falling postcard while others failed.
And this biomechanical enhancement, his enhanced nervous system, it makes him the ideal, in fact, the only possible on-the-spot controller for Jupiter. Because the round-trip signal delay from Ganymede, where the human base is 6 seconds. Remote control is impossible. You need immediate superhuman human control to survive in that environment.
And the scale of Jupiter is just terrifyingly immersive. The atmosphere is hydrohelium. Falcon feels he has shrunk to 1/10 of his normal size.
He realizes that Jupiter is to Earth as Earth is to India. It's an overwhelming vastness. The horizon is 1,800 miles away.
He's an enhanced human, but he's completely dwarfed by his surroundings.
And the exploration leads to the discovery of life forms that challenge every biological assumption we have based on Earth.
First, the voices of the deep.
Low, booming, infrasonic vibrations detected miles below him. Likely natural phenomena, but they give the impression of gigantic heartbeats or communication.
Then, the skyborne cattle.
Massive, black, arrowhead-shaped mantas browsing on cloud pastures made of hydrocarbon foam. They're essentially living off petrochemicals accumulated over 1 million years. The life is vast, slow, and totally alien.
And finally, the Medusa.
An immense, roughly oval, mile-long object discovered in a gigantic 600-mile-wide whirlpool. It's described as a living cloud.
And it generates megawatts of heat for buoyancy and has these powerful electric defenses.
1,000,000 volts of electricity, which it uses against the mantis that get too close. And here's the technological realization that elevates it from just an organism to a potential intelligence.
The Medusa has a radio sense.
It's potentially tapping the intense radio energy of Jupiter's ionospheric storms, which are caused by ascending gas plumes short-circuiting the planet's massive radiation belts. This suggests it could be a self-sustaining, floating power plant.
So, based on its highly patterned markings, its complex defenses, and its use of planetary forces, Mission Control applies the Prime Directive immediately.
Assume intelligence and maintain distance.
And Falcon, the bionic pilot, becomes the first human ambassador. The irony is so poignant.
He is the first immortal midway between two orders of creation, being neither machine nor fully human. He experiences this unique loneliness as he represents humanity to a mile-long, cloud-based life form.
He's the necessary bridge between technology and nature.
He is.
We can cap off this theme of technology and limits with the ultimate journeys, solar sailing and interstellar colonization, focusing on the use of pressure and radiation, which he championed decades before.
The Wind from the Sun details solar sailing beautifully. A square mile of thin film weighs only a ton and can collect 5 pounds of radiation pressure from the sun.
Propulsion without propellant. Using sunlight itself as an endless fuel source, it's the poetry of technical elegance.
We also briefly see this in the Songs of Distant Earth, which touches on the true challenges of interstellar colonization. The ships travel at 1/10 of the speed of light,
using a massive ice ablation shield to protect against erosion from interstellar dust.
and the need for that shield requires the ships to stop every few centuries to harvest comet ice and build a completely new shield. It resets the clock on their journey.
It's a fascinating demonstration of how even at near-light speeds, interstellar travel imposes these immense logistical burdens and timescales.
But in The Wind from the Sun, the focus comes right back to the individual limit. John Merton, the solar yacht skipper, he chooses to sail his vessel Diana alone.
He sacrifices 500 pounds of mass to maximize performance. And he did this because, despite all his fame and success, he realized he had never done anything by himself. Always he had been one of an army.
He was seeking a final, singular achievement. And when a dangerous solar storm forces the abandonment of the race, and he's ordered to leave the vessel.
Merton ensures Diana is placed on a trajectory straight into interstellar space.
It's his final act of defiance and poetry. He transforms a failure to win the race into this act of timeless exploration.
He didn't achieve the planned goal, but he achieved something profoundly more lasting and meaningful.
He ensures his ship becomes the first of all man's ships to set sail on the long journey to the stars. It's a testament to that enduring human need for individual, meaningful endeavor, even in an age of massive technological projects.
What an incredible journey we've taken through these sources. I mean, we've moved from that small boy collecting dinosaur cards and hunting for pulp magazines
to the scale of planetary extinction, first contact with cosmic sentinels, and the technological poetry of solar sailing.
And the core theme running through all of this material, it seems to me, is how human achievement is constantly defined by overcoming limits.
Not just external physical limits like the inertia of an alien statue, but often self-imposed psychological ones.
Right, whether it's Grant's ethical failure in Breaking Strain or Corellan's necessary deception in Guardian Angel.
The human capacity for progress often relies on confronting our own internal shortcomings.
And technologically, the source material shows that the most sophisticated advancements, they often rely on simple elegance, or on just utilizing immense scales of time and size.
That's absolutely right. The Jupiter V starship, the Overlord's method of control, the Sentinel, they all rely on simple principles, whether it's one-way glass or Newton's first law, but applied across millions of years.
This science fiction really served as a crucial test lab for ethics, didn't it?
It did. It provided guidelines like the Prime Directive in meeting with Medusa, and it helped process profound political change, like Stormgren realizing the true, quiet death of the sovereign state.
Ultimately, I think the enduring success of these stories is that they just expanded our idea of what life, what intelligence, and even what consciousness could possibly be.
And this raises an important question for you, the learner, to consider. If the most advanced form of intelligence Howard Falcon found on Jupiter, the Medusa utilized the natural chaos of a planetary radio storm for power and communication.
An evolutionary path that's completely impossible on a quiet planet like Earth.
Exactly. So what other forms of life, fundamentally unlike anything we can even imagine, are waiting out there in the universe to be discovered not by sight, but by science. It forces us to reconsider the very definition of consciousness as we know it.
A perfect and humbling thought to take with us as we look up at the vastness tonight. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.